ho! Merry, Merry Christmas! It's me, Santa Claus, and I'm here to read another chapter of A Miracle on 34th Street. Ooh. We're up to chapter 15. Can you believe that? It's going by so fast, and Christmas is getting closer and closer. Are you excited for Christmas? Well, I'm excited for Christmas. I'm excited to go deliver presents all over the world. So, we're going to read chapter 15 today. And let's go ahead and get right into it, because we were in the courthouse, remember? Okay. The next day, the hearing was held in an even larger courtroom, and that was packed long before His Honor made his entrance. Most of the crowd was rooting for Chris. The rest were there to see what this crazy young lawyer was going to do. The hearing had caught the public fancy. Judge Harper could have filled the Polo Grounds had he wished to hold court there. Fred's first witness was Mr. R.H. Macy. He seemed rather uneasy as he took the oath. "Are you the owner of one of the largest department stores in New York City?" Fred asked him. "The largest," said Mr. Macy. He then identified Mr. Kringle as his employee. Did he believe him to be sane? Yes. Did he believe him to be truthful? Yes. Mr. Mara jumped up. "Mr. Macy, you are under oath," he warned. "Do you honestly believe that this man is Santa Claus?" Mr. Macy hesitated, gulped, but then he realized his alternative. If Chris wasn't really Santa Claus, then Macy's Santa was insane. He had no choice. "Yes," he said in a loud, defiant voice. "That is all," said Fred. On his way back to his seat, Mr. Macy's eye caught Mr. Sawyer seated in the third row. He slackened his brisk pace slightly and glared at Sawyer. "You're fired," he said with satisfaction, and moved on quickly up the aisle. Dr. Pierce was the next to take the stand. He was the physician at the Maplewood home. He had known Chris for many years. Did he believe him to be Santa Claus? "I do," said Dr. Pierce quietly. Again, Morrow was on his feet. The doctor was a man of science. Was he not? Had he any rational, scientific reason for this opinion? The question was a boomerang for Mara. "Yes," said Dr. Pierce, "I have." Mr. Mara sat down. Now Fred questioned Dr. Pierce. "Did you express a wish for Christmas to Mr. Kringle several weeks ago?" "Yes," said Dr. Pierce. "What was it?" "Well, I wanted an X-ray machine for the home." Had he expressed this wish to anyone else? "No, it was too fantastic. X-ray equipment is very expensive." "What had arrived at the Maplewood home the day before?" "The X-ray machine," said the doctor. "Where had it come from?" The card said, "Merry Christmas from Chris Kringle." "Did he know of any other possible donor?" "No." "What did he conclude from this?" "Well," said Dr. Pierce, "when I made the wish, I said to myself, if I really get this X-ray machine, I'll believe he's Santa Claus. It came, and so I do." Next, Fred put Jim the zookeeper on the stand. Jim testified to Mr. Kringle's uncanny way with reindeer. He, their keeper, could only come near there when they were tied, and he had fed them for 12 years. Yet these same reindeer walked right up to Mr. Kringle and ate out of his hand. This was too much for Mr. Mara. He objected to the whole line of testimony. It was ridiculous, irrelevant, and immaterial. Mr. Gailey was making a circus out of this court. There was no such person as Santa Claus, and everybody knew it. There was a murmur of disagreement from the courtroom. Fred said this was purely a matter of opinion. Could Mr. Mara offer any proof that there was no Santa Claus? Mr. Mara grew hot under the collar. No, of course he couldn't, and he didn't intend to. This was no nursery. This was a New York State Supreme Court. They were only wasting the court's time with this childish nonsense. Was there or was there not a Santa Claus? He asked the judge for an immediate ruling. His Honor looked very unhappy indeed. Mara had won, he feared. Officially, he could make but one decision. Then his eye fell on Charlie Halloran among the spectators. Charlie was shaking his head violently and gesturing towards the judge chambers. Chambers. It's where the judge hangs out. The chambers. "This court will take a short recess to consider the matter," announced the judge. "Look," said Charlie when they were alone, "I don't care what you decide about old Whiskerpuss out there, but if you go back and officially rule that there's no Santa Claus, you may as well start looking for that chicken farm right now. We can't even put you up for the primaries." But how can I say there's a Santa Claus, Charlie? I'm a responsible judge. If I do, they'll have me disrobed. They'll try me for insanity. Listen, Henry, said Charlie, trying to control himself. Do you know how many millions of dollars worth of toys are made each year? Toys that wouldn't be sold if it wasn't for Santa Claus. Have you ever heard of the National Association of Manufacturers? How do you think they'll like your ruling? And what about all the men they employ to make these toys? Union men. What about the AFL and the CIO? They're going to love you, Henry. And they're going to say it with boats. Then there are the department stores, and the candy companies, and the Christmas card makers, and the Salvation Army. They've got a Santa Claus on every corner. You're going to be an awful popular fella, Henry. And what about the Christmas baskets we give out? I'm telling you, if you rule that there's no Santa Claus, you can get counting on just getting 2 votes. Yours and that fella Mara's. His Honor shook his head sadly and raised one finger. Mara's a Republican, he said. His Honor returned to the bench with dignity and called the court to order. The question of Santa Claus, he found, is by and large a matter of opinion. Many people firmly believe in him. Many others do not. The tradition of American justice demands a broad and unprejudiced view of such a controversial matter. This court intends to keep an open mind. It will hear any evidence on either side. Suppressed cheers greeted this announcement. Mr. Mara looked at Fred scornfully. Could he produce any such evidence? Yes, Fred could. Would Mr. Thomas Mara please take the stand? Who? Me? Said Mara, startled. Fred shook his head. Thomas Mara, Jr., he said. A 7-year-old boy left his mother and came dashing down the aisle. Mr. Mara was completely bewildered at the sudden appearance of his son. He glared angrily at his wife standing near an aisle seat. She held up a subpoena and shook her head in a gesture of helpless innocence. By the time Mara had regained his composure, Tommy was eagerly beginning to testify. Do you believe in Santa Claus? Fred was asking him. Sure I do. He gave me a brand new sled last year. What does he look like, Tommy? Tommy pointed unerringly at Mr. Kringle. There he is. He's sitting right there. Mr. Mara protested feebly. Overruled, said His Honor sternly. Tell me, Tommy, why are you so sure there is a Santa Claus? Asked Fred. Because my daddy told me so, said Thomas Jr., indicating his father. A roar of laughter came from the crowd. Even the judge was grinning broadly as he rapped for order. And you believe your daddy, don't you, Tommy? He's a truthful man. Thomas was very indignant at this foolish question. Of course he is. My daddy wouldn't tell me a thing that wasn't so. Thank you, Tommy, said Fred quietly, and sat down. The crowd reacted again. Thomas Mara Sr. rose to his feet. Filled with confusion, Tommy scrambled down from the witness box and started for his mother. On the way he passed close to Mr. Kringle. The temptation was irresistible. He leaned over to Chris confidentially. Don't forget, he said in a loud stage whisper, a real official football helmet. You shall have it, Tommy, Chris told him, beaming, and Tommy ran happily back to his mother. Mr. Mara glanced quickly toward his son and then back to the judge. Your Honor, he said slowly, the state of New York concedes the existence of Santa Claus. The court concurs, said Judge Harper happily. He had gotten out of that one nicely. He beamed at Charlie and the crowd, and Charlie winked and smiled approvingly. Fred had made tremendous progress, far beyond his wildest hopes, but he still had the major hurdle ahead of him, and he knew it. And what was far worse, Mara knew it too. And then her picture says, because my daddy told me so, said Thomas Jr., indicating his father. And look, there's little Tommy. We'll look at a better shot there. There we go. There's little Tommy, and the judge is the man with the gray hair. And then standing there is Fred. He's the lawyer for Chris. So, isn't that great? But having so conceded, Your Honor, Mara was saying, we ask that Mr. Gailey cease presenting personal opinion as evidence. The state could bring in hundreds of witnesses with opposite opinions, but it is our desire to shorten this hearing rather than prolong it. I therefore demand that Mr. Gailey now submit authoritative proof that Mr. Kringle is the one and only Santa Claus. Your point is well taken, Mr. Mara, the judge said, and I'm afraid I must agree. Was Gailey prepared to show that Kringle was Santa Claus on the basis of competent authority? Fred was not prepared to do so at this time. He asked for an adjournment. This hearing stands adjourned until tomorrow afternoon at 3, announced the judge quickly. Fred left the courtroom with a heavy heart. He was afraid that he was licked. What competent authority could he possibly produce? It looked as if the case of Mr. Kringle was a lost cause. Oh no! A lost cause! For me! Santa Claus! That's not good. Lost cause, Santa Claus? It even rhymes a little. Alright, well that was chapter 15. Tomorrow we'll read chapter 16. We're getting close to the end. Are you excited? Find out what happens to Santa Claus? What's going to happen to me? We're in court, proving that it's me. What a great story, though, so far, huh? Yeah, you like the story? Well, children, don't forget, if you want to make sure you get every episode, just click like and subscribe. And I will see you again tomorrow. Merry, Merry Christmas. Goodbye.